Before you begin your math journal assignment this week, let's do a quick review of what multiples are, and then I'm going to show you some strategies for identifying common multiples because that is a skill you're going to need in order to be able to complete your math journal assignment. So let's start with this question. What are multiples? Well, multiples are the results of multiplying a number by other numbers. In other words, multiples are all of the numbers it will divide into without leaving a remainder. And one way that we can easily find multiples of a given number is by starting at that number and then counting on by the number. So if I wanted to find the multiples of 5, I would start at 5 and count on or skip count by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and so on and so on and so on. And yes, multiples, like numbers, are infinite. Now, we have a couple of different tools that we can use to help us count on by a given number. And those are a hundreds chart, a number line, and a multiplication table, or as it is also sometimes known, a times table. So let's take a look at each of these tools one by one. How can we use a hundreds chart to find the multiples of a number? Well, let's say I wanted to find the multiples of 4. I can take a hundreds chart, and this chart doesn't fully go all the way to 100. I just stopped at 40 for the purposes of this video. But I can take a hundreds chart and then use a highlighter or a light color to shade in all of the multiples of that number. So I start at 4 and then I count 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. I get to 8. I count 4 more to 12, and so on and so on and so on. So every fourth square I will color in with that color, and I'm finding my multiples of 4. So we can see here the multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, and so on and so on and so on and so on forever. Now, let's say I also want to find the multiples of 6, and then I want to find the common multiples of 4 and 6. Well, I'm going to use the same hundreds chart, but I'm going to mark it differently for the multiples of 6. So I will count ahead to the number 6. And in this case, what I've done is I've just used a blue circle to help me identify the multiples of 6. So I counted to 6 and I put a blue circle. I counted 6 more, which took me to 12. I put a blue circle, counted 6 more, put a blue circle around 18, and we can see that the multiples of 6 that fit on this chart are 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and so on and so on and so on. Well, you might have noticed that 3 of the numbers on this chart are both highlighted and have the blue circle, which means they're a multiple of 4 and a multiple of 6. So the numbers 12, 24, and 36 appear in both lists. And so they are the common multiples of 4 and 6 because they are common to both 4 and 6. 4 and 6 have those multiples in common. So I hope that helps you understand why we use the phrase common multiples to refer to these numbers. So these are not the only common multiples of 4 and 6. They're just the ones that happen to fit on this chart. There are many more. And if we remember, one of the ways that we defined multiples was numbers that could be divided by another number without leaving a remainder. And if we look at 12, we can divide 12 by 4 and we get 3, no remainder. And we divide 12 by 6, we get 2, no remainder. So that seems to work. 24 divided by 4 equals 6, no remainder. 24 divided by 6 equals 4, no remainder. And it works for 36 as well. So that's one way of checking to make sure if a number is indeed a common multiple. Divide it by both of the numbers that you're trying to find multiples for. And if it works with no remainder, then you know it's a common multiple. Let's move on and look at how we can use a number line to help us find multiples of a number and common multiples of two numbers. So if we wanted to find the multiples of 8 on a number line, we would start at 0 and skip count by 8. So 8, then 16, 24, 32, 40, and so on. And imagine we want to find the multiples of 12. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start at 0 and skip count by 12. 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84. Now, some of us can do these easily in our heads. Others may want to pull out a calculator to help a little bit in making sure that we are not making an arithmetic mistake. So how are we going to identify common multiples of 8 and 12? Well, we can do that by looking for the numbers that are the same on both of those number lines. So we see here, if we circle the numbers that show up on both number lines, 24, 48, and 72 show up on both number lines, and they are the common multiples of 8 and 12. Now remember our trick. We can double check by dividing each one of these numbers that we believe are common multiples by both 8 and 12. And if we get a whole number as an answer without a remainder, then we know that they are indeed common multiples. And if we use 24 as an example, 24 divided by 8 equals 3 with no remainder. 24 divided by 12 equals 2 with no remainder. So it is indeed a common multiple of both 8 and 12. Let's take a look at using a times table to find the multiples of a number. And we'll start with 3. To find the multiples of 3, we will move along the row or column for 3. Okay, so we find our 3's and we go along and we can highlight the whole row or the whole column, and that shows us all of our multiples of 3. And you'll notice this times table goes to 10 on one side and only to 7 on the other side. But again, I'm just shortened it to make it small enough to fit on this slide for this example. Now, if we want to find the multiples of 7, we're going to move along the row or column for 7. And you notice I marked it differently again. So I used a circle this time to tell that these were for the multiples of 7 and not 3, which 3 were highlighted in purple. So we can see when we do this, that 21 is a common multiple of 3 and 7 because it has both a circle and it's highlighted. Again, we can take 21 and try dividing it by 3 and try dividing it by 7. And if it works for both with a whole number as your quotient, then you know you have gotten a common multiple. So when you are working on your math journal problem, you could use any one of these 3 strategies, a hundreds chart, a number line, or a times table to help you find your common multiples. Or you could simply write out a list of multiples for each number and use that to help you find common multiples. Good luck.